Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. My name is Tia Patterson. I am the principal attorney of Patterson Justice Council, located right here in Detroit, Michigan, where we help homeowners, property owners, and other investors to protect their property, have their rights respected, and leave legacies to their lineage. So we do at our firm is a lot of what you would call traditional estate planning, probate process, which is the court you go to when one family member or whomever passes away and you settle assets there. And we also do some general civil litigation, which is lawsuits, especially as it pertains to property disputes. Okay, but it's all in the matter of protecting what you have for your benefit now and for the benefit of those coming after you. That's kind of our core theme. For those of you new to the channel who don't know what it is exactly that we do here, so thank you, welcome. Today, I want to talk about kind of that core theme. Was something that happened to me recently. It happens often enough. Obviously, being in this kind of area as a professional, people are always seeking my expertise when a family member dies, when they have some kind of probate dispute, and do they have to go to court? Do they have to do this? And I'm happy to answer. Obviously, this is what I do, but I'm always almost preaching, if you will, proaction. Okay, do something before you have to come to me and sort everything out. And so that's kind of where the title of the video came from. Why waiting until death is the worst time to plan. The premise is we all know. Okay, as soon as life happens, we know it will end, no matter what. Whether it's at a month, a day, a year, 10 years, 100 years, it's going to end. Okay. And that's not something we look forward to, but it is a reality that will never change. All right. With that said, at a certain point, and there's no certain age, I get asked a lot, is there an age when I need to look at it? No, there's no certain age, but you have to come to a certain point in your life where you kind of understand this reality. You don't fear it anymore. There's so much fear around death, but there should not be. But you just come to a responsibility that, okay, these are the people that I love in my life. This is what I have. I understand that I'm not going to be here much longer. Whether you get bad news, good news, whatever, you just understand that you're not going to be here forever. And when that time happens, this is what I want to happen. This is how I want these people to still be cared for. This is where I want my property to go. This is how I want to title the house, whatever it is. Okay. There's going to come a certain point in life where we get to that stage and we make those plans. Okay. But do not do it because somebody just died or because somebody is now terminal and you see it happening. The best time is always to do it when it's always to have it done before that happens. When it will be, we don't know. But if you have those thoughts in your mind, don't be afraid and get it done. And I'm going to tell you why in this video, because within the last week, since we shot the last video on uh, May 31st, Wednesday, May 31st, our last video, someone in my circle has passed away with no planning. And now I'm going to, be asked to kind of guide the remaining family members through whatever it is that needs to happen. And I wish I would have known sooner, right? Because I could have helped so much more on the front end. That's another thing. When we know there's an issue coming up or something that's going to happen eventually, like death, right? The sooner we prepare for it, the better, because it's always going to be harder on the back end. And that goes throughout life. All right. The more you're prepared, the better you are to deal with the situation when it happens. Period. That's a principle that will not change. All right. So, kind of with that context, with that background, let's get into why it is so important to not wait for death to happen to plan, but instead plan so that we're ready when death happens. Okay. So there are going to be three principal reasons we're going to talk about here today. You might have heard me say it before on previous videos, but I'm going to keep on saying it and saying it and saying it because everybody needs to hear it. And then sometimes we need to hear it multiple times for it to really sink in. All right. And then towards the end, I'm going to give some, if I can, some concrete ways to at least get some of this stuff done on your own terms. without any complicated planning. It's really not as complicated as it's made out to be. There are some things you can do on your own without legal strategy that will at least cover some bases so that things that you want to pass on are not stuck. Okay. So, first reason why you don't want to wait for death to happen is because you lose control. That's number one, obviously. When it's over, it's over. You can't make decisions anymore. You're not here anymore. Okay. So there's nothing else you can personally do to guide where you want your money to go, where you want your house to go, where you want your other property to go, who you want to be in control of, who you want to give it to. Nothing. That control is absolutely lost. All right. But that doesn't mean that there's not a plan in place. This is another thing. Just about every, I won't say every, because I'm not licensed in every state. So I'll speak definitely for the state of Michigan, where I'm a licensed attorney. There is a plan for you. There's a statutory plan, which means that there's a plan in the law for what is going to happen to your property if you die, what we call intestate. That means without a will, without any other kind of legal instrument that says what happens to your stuff when you pass. There is a plan in place for you, and you might not like it, or it might not be tailored to your exact circumstances. You might have some special circumstances that you would like to take care of. For instance, there's a term called a redheaded stepchild, which means like, you kind of treat this person like they're not really part of the family. And my belief is that a lot of it comes from estate planning. So, for instance, in the state of Michigan, stepchildren are not recognized as natural children. Okay, so if there's a blended family, a mother and a father come together, they've already had other children, now they're married, they acquire stepchildren, one of them passes away. Well, if that stepchild is not in the will, if that stepchild is not in the trust, that stepchild does not inherit anything. And it doesn't matter. The stepchild could have been 6 months old when the parents were married and raised until, the parent passes away and the kid is like 18, let's say, maybe, or maybe 15, whatever. They get nothing. They don't inherit because it's not a part of the law. Now, is that what you would want for a child that you've loved for so much of their life, for so much of your life, to just leave them with nothing? You know, that's what the law says. But is that what you want? You lose control of that decision to include somebody specifically if you don't put them in the plan because you didn't have anything in place. But the law has something in place for you. The law that you have, the law that is in place is not necessarily the law that you want in place for your situation. All right. Another common example is if there's a child, especially with grown children, who you want to take care for, you want to take care of, you want to leave them some things, but there may be a substance abuse problem or there may be a financial irresponsibility problem, right? Whether it's like gambling or overspending. Do you want to leave them in control of something so critical and something so valuable if they may not have the functionality, right? Or the management skills to take care of it? And you just know that they're going to blow the money in like a month, right? Well, if you don't make those provisions, you leave that possibility open. All right. So there's going to be a plan for you by law, according to the state, but it's not going to be the plan you necessarily want. And once you're gone, it doesn't matter. That's what's going to be in place. I've seen it in court, in live court, where, and these are grown people, right? I've seen it happen where there needs to be a probate case open and there is a widow. It's often a widow because a lot of times, in a traditional marriage, the woman is going to be the one left standing, if you will, just because women often live longer than men. And I do have a video about that also, about why it's so important for women to really take care of their planning. And this is also what happened to me recently, now another widow. But live in court where there's a widow who is settling a claim against the company that apparently caused husband's death. There was a money judgment, which means she's going to get money for it. And the agreement was for the widow and her daughter, which is husband's stepdaughter, to share some of the proceeds. But that was kicked out. The judge kicked it out because stepdaughter is not supposed to inherit, not under the law. Even though this is an agreement that they're coming to, even though that this is a person that the husband helped to raise and loved and care for decades, doesn't matter. It's not part of the law. The judge is going to kick it out. And we're going to get into court that's next, coming up, as to why you don't want to leave without having anything in place. Okay, but just know that you lose all control. Number one, you lose all control. That's why you don't want to wait until it is too late, because things can get out of hand that you may not want to happen, but you don't have any say so in it happening anymore. Okay. So number two, the second reason why you don't want to wait until death to plan or to try to think about these issues is because it causes confusion. And that is in the midst of your family grieving you. I don't know how many times, right? I've had to not only step in as professional legal counsel, and kind of strategize. This is what's happening. This is where it's going. This may be a direction, right? And give this professional guidance, but also just human emotional counsel, human emotional guidance, because it's a very sensitive time. And I'm not unaware of that, right? I've lost very significant people in my life, especially over the last 10 years. I've made a whole entire hour-long video about when I lost my father 10 years ago. And I know how painful that process is. And, I've obviously lost since then. And we all know what it is to lose something we love as human beings. It's a very common emotion, a very common feeling. It's very strong. That's not when you want to also be saying, hey, by the way, what about the house, right? Or, hey, by the way, what about this money that's locked away in the bank that we don't have access to? Especially if it's something that those grieving family members can still benefit from, right? Can still gain support from, can still use to take care of even some of the expenses that they needed to care for you. A lot of times that's what happens with like medical bills and expenses. And we're going to get into some of that too. But the point is that you want your family to be able to be in a place of comfort in the most uncomfortable, sometimes, time of their life, right? Experiencing this significant loss. But there's just this confusion all around what's going to happen next because they don't know. I mean, literally, just about every single time, not every single time, but so often, when somebody has passed away, within a week, I'm called on because the family doesn't know what to do next, or they're going to be calling me. They're letting me know, right? And this is why they're trying to still plan the funeral, plan the repast, plan the homegoing service. They're trying to do all that, which is like the natural course of action. But in the back of their mind, they're still thinking, oh my gosh, now what? And then, so there's not like a real sense of cohesion there. And, it's just very, to me, it can be really disheartening sometimes because, it's like you want to focus on first things first, take care of yourself emotionally, take care of the family with whatever they need, and then kind of get to legal stuff. But, sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. So it causes confusion when you don't have anything in place, when you're waiting until death, and now death is here and we don't know what to do, right? And then another thing about, not knowing what to do, usually two things happen that I see. Because a family doesn't know what to do, they just might not do anything. And they'll sit on something for a very long time, often years, right? And then after years have gone by, the issue has never resolved itself. So it's still something coming up. There have been several times where there's been like a house in a matriarch's name, a patriarch's name, and that was never properly passed down, even though it was cared for. But now there's a dispute about ownership, right? What's going to happen to it? How do we take care of it? Because it was never done from years before. I mean, this happens often. This has happened very, very often. And, again, just the weight of time makes it more costly because you're trying to undo something from so long ago. And it just adds to the burden. So, again, when family don't know what to do, the first thing they might do is just do nothing. And then the issue just stagnates and it just kind of festers over time until finally something's got to give. And that can often be so much more costly, expensive, stressful, energy and time consuming than if it would have been done much sooner. All right. And then maybe even the worst alternative is somebody doesn't know what to do. They'll just start making moves that they don't have to do. So one thing I see often is, let's say when it comes to bills being paid on a house or the phone or a utility bill, someone is still going to pay for that. And they're still paying, and they pay like right away. Or I've also seen these kind of companies contact, the last remaining family member and saying, "Hey, you last remaining family member, you owe this bill that your relative that just passed away didn't pay," and that's not true. Okay, that's not true. And here in the state of Michigan, it's not true. It'll go to the estate, right? It will go to the person who died, basically to their uh, what they call the estate. It will go to their expenses, not anyone else personally. You're not personally responsible for someone else's bills because they passed away. But I often see so many times people just paying those bills, paying them outright, and they don't have to necessarily. They don't. So they're just making these wrong moves, and maybe they're getting themselves further into debt, or just making further expenses that they're not responsible for because they just don't know what to do. All kind of confusion surrounding the issue because there was never a plan in place to address it in the first place. Okay, so that's the second major point. First one was obviously losing control because once you're gone, and then it's in somebody else's hands. Second one is causing confusion. So you didn't leave anything behind, and now the family is kind of just going from here to there, still mourning you, but then also just not knowing how to take care of the bills, how to take care of the property, the money that's been left behind, and now they've got to seek counsel somewhere else, or just maybe not do anything or make a wrong move. It's just all out in the air, all up in the air. Excuse me. And then the last reason why you don't want to wait and why waiting for death to happen can be the worst way to plan is because of court involvement. For me, as an attorney, it doesn't matter what case it is, I'm always counseling my clients that court is the point of last resort. Some attorneys, they want to start there and then fight it out publicly and make a name for themselves that way or whatever. No, not for me. Okay. Some of my cases have gone public. We can go there when the time calls for it, but no, court is the point of last resort for me because once it's there, it is there. There's really no getting out of it without like an official legal exit strategy and so many other reasons. So, as I said before, just in talking about the first point, there's going to be a plan in place. There is already a law waiting for you. The court more than likely is going to follow that law. I gave you the example with the stepchild and the widow. They came to agreement to share in proceeds from a claim that the late husband, his estate was entitled to, and the court said, no, stepdaughter, you can't have it because the law says you cannot inherit. Even though this is what they were wanting and agreed to, the company and the people, but the court said no. The court is always going to present a limited view. It's unpredictable. It is time consuming. The court costs. It's not free to just file in court, and that's in addition to attorney fees. I know some people are happy to pay their attorneys. I have many good clients who are, right? But that doesn't mean that they want to pay the court, and it costs the court. You have to pay to get in there. But overall, the court, I say, is the point of last resort because there are so many things you can do before it gets there. That give you the freedom, that give you the flexibility, that give you the objective, that give you the ability to meet your objectives without being limited. And I think one thing that people get confused on is, they want their day in court, they want fairness, justice, all this stuff. That's not guaranteed in court. Yes, you can have your due process, you can present your case and all that, but at the end of the day, the court is a neutral arbiter. That means they don't play favorites, quote unquote, and you make the case. They go by the law, and it might be unfavorable to you. So just because you're going there doesn't mean you're going to get a victory. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a resolution you like. If we could, I've said some things to my clients before, like if we could just get along, if we all just get along, right? Or if people just treated people fairly, we wouldn't have to go to court. We wouldn't have to make these kinds of investments because for me, that is just, it's always last. It's always an option, but it's always the last option. It's just so limiting. There are so many other more freeing legal mechanisms and vehicles that you can use to avoid going to court. But if you do nothing and you have no will in place, you don't have a trust in place, you don't have something to dictate what's going to happen to your things when you pass away, more than likely it's going to end up in court. Because if it's only in your name, even if you're married, even if you don't have children, whatever, if you have anything just in your name, you don't have a will in place, you don't have a trust in place, it's going to go to court. And then the process is going to take over from there. And once that happens, you're talking time, you're talking expense, and you're talking liability. So let's get into it. Time. You lose instant access to funds. Okay. This is why. This is a very actionable item right here. I preach it to everybody who will listen. If you're going to do something, anything, name beneficiaries on all accounts and policies that you own. Bank accounts, retirement accounts, life insurance. Name somebody there, okay? Just do it. You can change it later. It's not set in stone. Everything when it comes to planning, estate planning, with very limited exception, is flexible, and it is not forever. If it is, it will tell you. All right. But naming a beneficiary on account is something you can change later, but you can't change it if there's no one there and you pass away. Okay, then it would have to go to court. And I'm dealing with that issue now. I've dealt with that issue in the past. I'll give another example of a case I had a few years ago. I think I've talked about this before also, where clients' parents both tragically passed away. Father had an insurance policy, but no beneficiary was named on it. So we needed to open up a case in probate court. And this was I think $25,000 or $20,000 life insurance policy. If there was a beneficiary named on it, they could have had it as soon as the death certificate was presented to them. So maybe a couple of weeks, and they would have had $25,000. Instead, we needed to go through the probate process. It took an extra 6 months. All right. And I had to get involved even more because the life insurance company just didn't want to give up the funds. And so I have to step in as the attorney and saying, this is all totally legal. We have the papers. Basically, where is the money? Okay. So would you rather have your let's say your spouse, your child, would you rather have them get the $25,000 ASAP, let's say within a month or less, or would you have them wait 6 months? I mean, what could they do with that money in a month compared to 6 months waiting for it? Bank accounts are the same thing. I have an issue with that now, where, if there's no and we don't know if there's a beneficiary on the account. Oh, thank goodness, because then we'll just present the death certificate and be able to get the funds. If not, we got to go to court. And court here in Michigan is going to take at least 5 months. The process has to be open for at least that long. Okay. So we're talking about the time you lose instant access to funds and what you can do with that, what your beneficiaries can do with that, what your loved ones can do with that. Expenses. Again, court is not free. All right. You're going to open up a case. It costs money to do that. You want to get an attorney, a good attorney, it's going to cost money to do that. There are other little fees that come up with, based on how much is in the estate, or based on getting this paperwork here, this paperwork there. It's going to cost. All right. Sometimes it's not as expensive as people think, but it's still an unnecessary expense, where if you had it all planned out ahead of time, you wouldn't pay any of that. It would be done. All right. And liability. So, not to avoid creditors, but oftentimes, especially with married couples, if it's structured in a way where the other spouse will take over everything, then the one spouse's creditors don't have anything to try to take away from. So for instance, I'll give an example. Maybe 5 years ago or so, I had a elderly gentleman who actually lost his wife, and they owned their home together, okay, here in Michigan. It's called a tenancy by the entirety. It's a married couple. And that means that basically the last remaining spouse will take over the house automatically. There's nothing else that needs to be done. And the spouse that deceased, their interest is just gone. So 100% goes to the last surviving spouse. This is what happened in the case with the gentleman. And the woman who passed away didn't have any other bank accounts, didn't have anything else in her name. All right. But she did have bills, right? Like credit card bills and things like that. Well, there's nothing else in her name. There's no house that you can claim from. There's no bank accounts that you can claim from. There's no policies. So that's just a loss, for the creditors because there's nothing else to draw from. Whereas if you don't have it set up and you do have something in your name out there and you have to go to court, you have to notify creditors and they have rights to make their claims be known and collect on those claims. All right. So you're potentially opening up yourself for liability when you don't have to, depending on how your situation is structured. Okay. Not to intentionally avoid paying any bills, obviously, but in that particular case with just, credit cards and creditors, there was nothing more they could do. All right. So these are the reasons why you want to plan before death occurs and not be afraid of it. I'm talking very, I won't say casually, but I'm not speaking with fear. I'm not speaking with urgency like it's going to happen tomorrow either. I think that's another misnomer is that we think once we start planning for these things, it's going to happen. And that's not the case. Preparation is so critical. We want to prepare not for death, but we want to prepare for life for our loved ones after we're not here anymore. And we want to prepare them to still be able to succeed. We want them to be able to succeed emotionally, right? Not have to be worried about what's going to happen because we're already taken care of. We want them to be able to succeed, obviously, financially and economically, because we left a little nest egg for them to continue to build on. And we want to just make sure that our support and our love continues for them beyond our time here on earth. And that's what it's all about. It's just a given. That's what's going to happen. But this doesn't need to be a belabored process. It doesn't need to be a depressing process. It doesn't need to be a gloomy process at all. For me, it's a very creative process, actually. You get to anticipate a lot of variables and you get to really work it out the way you want to see fit. I think of it as creating your own puzzle, so we have a piece here, we have a piece here, and we get to shape it right within a boundary. So, obviously we don't want to be planning anything that is illegal outside of the law, right? So that's our boundary. But and that's very small. But anything inside of that, we get to pick those pieces and choose who's going to benefit here, who gets what, how we want to title it, how long is it going to last, how long we want our legacy to be. That's what we want to focus on. We want to focus on the positives of all of this because at the end of the day, that is what's most important. And focusing on the negatives, allowing the negatives to make us fearful and just into a state of inaction, that's not going to help ourselves. It's not going to help our loved ones. And that's what this is all about, is helping ourselves the way we can, right? Starting with us and then passing that on to the next generation because they deserve so much more from us. We always want to continue to build better into the future, not build any worse. Okay. So I hope that's helped you today. Please like, share, subscribe if it has. Let your family, friends, networks know that this is what we do here every Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Actually, next Wednesday, June 14th, we will not be live. I will be away on business. So we make sure to sneak a video in there for you at the same scheduled time. But please do subscribe so that you are notified when our videos go live on this channel. Okay. And until the next time, I'll see you then. Take care.